There's a strange paradox at the heart of the human journey. We are taught from our earliest moments that power comes from holding on to success, to love, to certainty, to identity, to meaning itself. We are told, sometimes gently, sometimes ruthlessly, that those who grip the hardest survive, that attachment is proof of commitment, and that letting go is a kind of failure or retreat. Yet beneath this collective instruction, beneath the noise of striving and clinging, there exists a quieter force, one so subtle that it is often mistaken for absence. This force is detachment, and it may be the most misunderstood spiritual power humanity has ever encountered. Detachment is often imagined as coldness, as indifference, as withdrawal from life's vivid colors. It is accused of being the refuge of those who fear intimacy or responsibility, a philosophical escape hatch for the weary. But this misunderstanding arises because detachment does not announce itself loudly. It does not posture or demand recognition. It does not flex. It operates more like gravity than lightning, shaping everything while remaining unseen. To approach detachment honestly is to begin dismantling many of the assumptions we carry about love, ambition, suffering, and even enlightenment itself. In the cosmic sense, detachment mirrors the behavior of the universe. Stars burn fiercely, yet they do not cling to their own light. Galaxies spiral with unimaginable energy, yet they allow matter to drift, collide, dissolve, and reform. Nothing in nature grasps permanence, and yet nothing is meaningless. The seasons do not mourn their own passing, nor does the ocean despair over each wave that collapses back into itself. There is motion without possession, intensity without fixation. In this sense, detachment is not the absence of engagement with life, but the purest form of participation. Human beings, however, are uniquely gifted and burdened with narrative. We do not simply experience events. We bind our identities to them. We say, "This is mine. This defines me. This must not change." And in doing so, we attempt to freeze a living universe into something manageable. Detachment threatens this habit. It loosens the grip of story, not to erase meaning, but to reveal a deeper one that exists prior to our desperate attempts to control it. This is why detachment feels unsettling. It asks us to stand without armor in a world we've been taught is dangerous. At a practical level, detachment is often conflated with passivity, as though letting go means ceasing to care. But true detachment is not the abandonment of care. It is the liberation of care from fear. When we are attached, our love is anxious, our ambition brittle, our values conditional. We love in order to be secured. We strive in order to be validated. We believe in order to be protected from uncertainty. Detachment removes the bargaining from these relationships. It allows love to be love, effort to be effort, belief to be inquiry. In this way, detachment is not less alive than attachment. It is more honest. Spiritually, detachment has appeared across traditions under different names and metaphors. It has been described as non-grasping, as surrender, as emptiness, as freedom from clinging, as the death of the false self. Yet in every form, it points toward the same essential movement, the release of the illusion that we can own what is inherently transient. This release is not nihilistic. It does not deny beauty, purpose, or joy. Instead, it reframes them as experiences rather than possessions, as currents to be entered rather than trophies to be hoarded. The misunderstanding arises because detachment does not flatter the ego. It does not promise control over outcomes or immunity from loss. In fact, it does the opposite. It reveals that loss is woven into the fabric of existence, and that our suffering comes not from this fact, but from our resistance to it. Detachment teaches that pain is inevitable, but bondage is optional. This is a radical message in a world obsessed with optimization, accumulation, and permanence. There's also a deeper, almost alchemical dimension to detachment that is rarely discussed. When we loosen our attachment to outcomes, identities, and expectations, something unexpected happens. Our capacity to act becomes sharper, not weaker. Freed from the constant need to protect an image of self, we respond more directly to reality. Decisions become cleaner. Presence deepens. Even courage transforms, no longer fueled by the need to prove worth, but by a quiet alignment with what feels true. Detachment, paradoxically, becomes a ground for which authentic power arises. This power is not domination or influence over others. It is coherence. It is the ability to remain internally unfragmented in a world that constantly pulls us in opposing directions. It is the strength to love without possession, to work without obsession, to face uncertainty without paralysis. Such power is invisible by conventional standards and therefore easily dismissed. Yet it is the power that allows sages to sit calmly amid chaos, artists to create without fear of rejection, and ordinary people to endure extraordinary circumstances without losing their humanity. To explore detachment is to enter a territory where language begins to thin, where metaphors become necessary because direct explanation fails. It is a journey inward and outward at once, touching psychology, spirituality, and lived experience. It asks not for belief, but for curiosity, not for withdrawal from the world, but for a new way of standing within it. Detachment does not ask you to give up your life. It asks you to stop mistaking what passes through your life for who you are. In the sections that follow, we will peel back the layers of this misunderstood force. We will examine its core ideas, wander through symbolic narratives that give it shape, and eventually return to the ground of everyday life to see how detachment moves through relationships, work, fear, and purpose. But for now, let this introduction serve as an opening door, not a command to let go, but an invitation to notice how tightly we hold, and what might become possible if we loosen our grip even slightly. To understand attachment, one must first unlearn the reflex to treat it as a single act, a dramatic release, a moment where something is dropped and then never picked up again. Detachment is not an event. It is an orientation. It is a way consciousness positions itself in relation to experience. At its core, detachment is not about separation from life, but about separation from illusion. Specifically, the illusion that identity, safety, or meaning can be permanently secured through external forms. This misunderstanding arises because the mind prefers solid objects and clear boundaries, while detachment operates in a realm of relationships, processes, and subtle shifts in perception. One of the foundational themes beneath detachment is the distinction between engagement and entanglement. Engagement is natural. It is the way life participates in itself through you. You engage with work, with love, with ideas, with challenges. Entanglement, however, is engagement fused with fear. It is the moment when participation becomes possession, when involvement becomes identity. Entanglement whispers that if this relationship ends, you will be diminished. If this role disappears, you will be nothing. If this outcome fails, you will be exposed. Detachment quietly dissolves this whisper. It does not tell you to disengage, but it reminds you that your being was never authored by any single role or outcome. Another central concept is the illusion of control. Much of attachment is fueled by the belief that clinging harder will stabilize reality. The mind behaves like a clenched fist around water, convinced that pressure will prevent loss. Yet the tighter the grip, the faster the water escapes. Detachment does not deny that action matters. It simply clarifies where action ends and illusion begins. You can influence circumstances, but you cannot own them. You can plant seeds, but you cannot command the weather. When attachment dominates, the psyche confuses effort with entitlement. Detachment restores a more accurate relationship with causality. It allows action to arise from intention rather than anxiety, from clarity rather than compulsion. There is also the theme of identity looseness versus identity collapse. Many fear detachment because they assume it means dissolving the self into emptiness. In reality, detachment does not erase identity. It makes identity flexible. When identity is rigid, every challenge becomes a threat, every disagreement a personal attack, every change a crisis. When identity is loose, experience can move through you without shattering you. Detachment creates a spacious self, one that can host contradiction, uncertainty, and transformation without demanding immediate resolution. This is not weakness. It is resilience of a rare and quiet kind. Underlying these ideas is a deeper metaphysical insight. Impermanence is not a flaw in reality, but its engine. Everything that exists does so through change. Attachment treats impermanence as an error to be corrected, while detachment recognizes it as the very condition that makes experience vivid. A song only moves you because it ends. A season only feels precious because it passes. A conversation only matters because it cannot be replayed exactly the same way again. Detachment does not numb you to these truths. It sensitizes you to them. It allows you to meet impermanence without panic, to feel transience without despair. Another guiding concept is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the raw data of life: loss, disappointment, aging, separation. Suffering is a story that insists pain should not be happening, or that it means something catastrophic about who you are. Attachment feeds suffering by turning pain into a verdict. Detachment interrupts this process. It does not anesthetize pain, but prevents pain from metastasizing into identity. You can feel grief without becoming grief. You can feel fear without being ruled by it. This is one of detachment's most misunderstood gifts. It does not make you less human. It makes your humanity less imprisoning. There is also an ethical dimension often overlooked. When attachment dominates, relationships subtly become transactions. Love becomes tangled with expectation. Kindness becomes conditional. Listening becomes a strategy for being validated. Detachment purifies intention. It allows you to give without keeping a ledger, to listen without preparing a defense, to love without scripting the future. This does not make relationships less committed. It makes them more real. Commitment born of detachment is chosen again and again, not enforced by fear of loss. At the deepest level, detachment reveals a distinction between awareness and content. Thoughts, emotions, roles, and sensations are contents of experience. Awareness is the field in which they appear. Attachment happens when awareness forgets itself and collapses into content, mistaking a passing pattern for the whole sky. Detachment is the remembering. It is awareness recognizing that it can host anger without being anger, desire without being desire, success without being success, failure without being failure. This recognition does not remove content from life. It changes your relationship to it. The waves still rise, but you no longer believe you are only the wave. This is why detachment is often described as freedom, though that word too is frequently misunderstood. It is not freedom from responsibility or consequence. It is freedom from compulsive identification. It is the difference between acting because you must protect an image and acting because the moment calls for it. It is the difference between chasing meaning and allowing meaning to emerge. Detachment is not the erasure of passion, but its refinement. Passion no longer burns to fill a void. It burns because it is alive. Taken together, these themes form a quiet but radical framework. Detachment is not withdrawal, not indifference, not passivity. It is clarity without clinging, care without captivity, presence without possession. It is the art of standing in the middle of life's movement without demanding that it freeze around you. And while these ideas can be spoken, they are ultimately meant to be lived, felt, tested against the textures of real experience. To deepen this understanding further, it helps to move beyond abstraction and into story, symbol, and image, places where the mind loosens its grip and insight can arrive sideways, like light entering through a crack. Long before detachment was analyzed, defined, or debated, it was told as a story. Human understanding has always reached for metaphor when language alone could not hold the shape of a truth. Detachment, being subtle and easily distorted, often reveals itself more clearly in images than in explanations. These symbolic narratives do not instruct the mind directly. They bypass it, entering through imagination and resonance, allowing insight to settle where arguments cannot reach. There is an old image of a traveler crossing a desert with a mirror strapped to their chest. The mirror is precious, for it reflects the sky, the sun, and the traveler's own face, reminding them of who they are. Over time, the traveler becomes obsessed with protecting the mirror. They shield it from sand, from heat, from scratches. They adjust their posture to keep it safe, even when it cuts into their skin. Eventually, the journey becomes secondary to the mirror's survival. When the mirror finally cracks, the traveler collapses in despair, convinced that something essential has been lost. Yet when the mirror falls away, the traveler looks up for the first time in years and sees the vast sky directly, no longer mediated by reflection. Detachment, in this story, is not the loss of the mirror, but the discovery that the sky was never inside it. Another story speaks of a river that runs through a valley, feeding villages, fields, and forests. At one point, a community builds elaborate dams and channels to control the river's flow, believing that mastery will bring security. At first, it works. Crops grow predictably. Floods are prevented. But slowly, the river's vitality diminishes. The water stagnates. The land grows brittle. When a great storm arrives, the rigid structures break, unleashing destruction far worse than the natural floods ever were. In the aftermath, the survivors learn to guide the river rather than imprison it, allowing space for overflow, movement, and renewal. Detachment here is not abandoning the river, but respecting its nature. It is the wisdom of relationship rather than domination. There is also the image of a flame held in an open palm. When the hand is open, the flame dances, warming the skin without consuming it. When the hand closes, trying to possess the flame, it extinguishes or burns. Many spiritual traditions return to this image in different forms. Love, purpose, creativity, even enlightenment itself behave like that flame. They thrive in openness and die in grasping. Detachment is the open palm. It does not reject the flame. It understands how fire lives. One symbolic narrative tells of a sculptor working with clay beside a riverbank. Each day, the sculptor shapes beautiful forms, and each night, the river rises slightly, softening the edges. At first, the sculptor rages against this, building barriers, working frantically to preserve each detail. Exhaustion follows. One evening, in surrender, the sculptor allows the river to touch the work. Something unexpected happens. The forms become smoother, more organic, alive in a way they were not before. The river is no longer an enemy, but a collaborator. Detachment in this story is a shift from resistance to cooperation with change. Another tale speaks of a bird raised in a golden cage. The cage is large, ornate, filled with comfort. The bird is well-fed, admired, and safe from predators. Yet it grows restless, haunted by a longing it cannot name. One day, the door is left open. The bird hesitates, afraid of hunger, storms, and uncertainty. Finally, it flies out. The sky is vast, frightening, and exhilarating. The bird learns that freedom is not the absence of danger, but the presence of authenticity. Detachment is the courage to leave the gilded certainty of the cage, not because it is cruel, but because it is incomplete. Symbolically, detachment often appears as a crossing, a bridge between clinging and trust, between fear and openness, between the known and the living unknown. In myths, the hero must release something dear to pass through a threshold, a weapon, a name, a belief, a companion. This is not punishment. It is preparation. What cannot be released cannot cross. Detachment becomes a toll paid not to lose something, but to travel lighter, to move in harmony with the terrain ahead. These narratives point to a truth that analytical language struggles to convey. Detachment is not subtraction, but transformation. What is released does not vanish. It changes form. Control becomes participation. Possession becomes appreciation. Identity becomes presence. The fear that detachment will empty life is revealed as a misunderstanding of fullness itself. Fullness is not accumulation, it is flow. In many symbolic traditions, the wise figure is not the one who has acquired the most, but the one who can sit beside loss without being shattered. They do not harden against pain, nor do they drown in it. They remain permeable. Detachment is this permeability without collapse. It is a capacity to be touched without being owned, to be shaped without being erased. These stories do not demand belief. They offer mirrors. Each invites the listener to ask where they are gripping too tightly, where they are mistaking reflection for sky, where they are damming a river that longs to move. Detachment begins as a subtle shift in listening, a softening of the inner fist. It is rarely dramatic at first. It is noticed in the moment you let a conversation end without rehearsing it afterward, in the breath you take when a plan dissolves, in the quiet acceptance that not everything needs to resolve itself today. To bring detachment out of story and into life, however, requires translation. Metaphor opens a door, but practice walks through it. The question then becomes not whether detachment is beautiful or wise, but how it lives in the ordinary terrain of work, relationships, fear, and choice. How does this misunderstood power express itself not in myths, but in mornings, conflicts, ambitions, and endings? That is where its true challenge and its true gift reveals itself. When detachment leaves the realm of philosophy and story and steps into the ordinary rhythm of days, it reveals its most radical quality. It is quietly practical. It does not require monasteries or isolation or dramatic renunciations. It asks instead for a subtle reorientation in how one meets experience, moment by moment. In daily life, detachment does not announce itself with mystical thunder. It shows up as a different posture of attention, a softened urgency, a willingness to remain present even when outcomes refuse to cooperate. In relationships, detachment often feels counterintuitive at first. We are taught that closeness requires holding tightly. That commitment is measured by how much we fear losing someone. Yet fear is not intimacy. It is surveillance. When attachment governs love, the relationship becomes a fragile structure constantly monitored for signs of collapse. Words are weighed, gestures interpreted, futures negotiated long before they arrive. Detachment changes the texture of this dynamic. It allows love to breathe. When you no longer demand that another person complete you, stabilize you, or guarantee your happiness, you meet them more honestly. You listen rather than anticipate. You respond rather than react. Paradoxically, this makes connection deeper because it is no longer filtered to the constant anxiety of self-protection. In work and ambition, detachment reframes effort. Many people live in a state of chronic tension, pushing themselves not out of inspiration, but out of fear. Fear of falling behind, fear of being irrelevant, fear of not being enough. Attachment to outcomes turns work into a referendum on worth. Detachment does not remove ambition. It removes desperation. You still care about excellence, but your nervous system is no longer held hostage by results. You can give your full attention to the task itself rather than to the imagined judgment that may follow. This often leads to better work. Not because you're trying harder, but because your energy is no longer fragmented by anxiety. Detachment also transforms the experience of failure. When identity is fused with success, failure becomes a personal verdict. It feels final, exposing, humiliating. Detachment loosens this fusion. Failure becomes information rather than condemnation, a moment in a longer unfolding rather than an endpoint. You still feel disappointment, but it moves through you instead of defining you. This ability to metabolize failure without collapsing or hardening is one of detachment's most tangible powers in the real world. In moments of uncertainty, detachment reveals itself as a capacity to remain open. Modern life often pressures us to decide quickly, to label experiences as good or bad, to resolve ambiguity as fast as possible. Attachment feeds this pressure by insisting that uncertainty is dangerous. Detachment allows uncertainty to be inhabited rather than eliminated. You can say, "I don't know," without panic. You can wait without freezing. This does not mean indecision. It means allowing clarity to emerge rather than forcing it prematurely. Many of life's most aligned decisions arrive not through force, but through patience. Emotionally, detachment changes how feelings are held. Instead of suppressing emotion or being overwhelmed by it, detachment creates a third option: witnessing. Anger can be felt fully without being acted out destructively. Sadness can be honored without becoming a permanent identity. Joy can be experienced without clinging. This does not make emotions weaker. It makes them cleaner. They move through the system without leaving residue. Over time, this reduces emotional exhaustion and builds a quiet trust in one's own inner weather. Detachment also has implications for how one relates to the larger currents of society. News cycles, social media, and collective anxiety thrive on attachment to outrage and fear. When detachment is present, one can remain informed without being consumed, compassionate without being flooded. You care, but you are not paralyzed. You act where you can, but you do not confuse responsibility with omnipotence. This balance is increasingly vital in a world that constantly demands emotional overinvestment. Even in moments of loss, detachment offers a different kind of support. Grief does not disappear, nor should it. Detachment does not ask you to bypass sorrow. It asks you not to add a second layer of suffering by insisting that loss should not exist. Grief becomes an expression of love rather than a collapse of meaning. You feel it deeply, but you trust that it can move through you without destroying your capacity to live. This trust is not theoretical. It is built slowly through repeated experiences of letting emotions rise and fall without trying to control them. Practically, detachment often begins with small internal gestures, noticing the impulse to control and pausing, allowing a conversation to end without replaying it, letting a plan change without immediately seeking someone to blame. These moments may seem insignificant, but they accumulate. Over time, they rewire the nervous system's relationship to uncertainty. Life begins to feel less like a battlefield and more like a landscape. Sometimes harsh, sometimes beautiful, always changing. Detachment does not make life predictable. It makes life navigable. It does not eliminate pain, but it reduces unnecessary suffering. It does not promise constant peace, but offers a stable center from which peace can return. In this way, detachment becomes less a philosophy and more a lived intelligence, one that expresses itself in tone of voice, in timing, in restraint, in courage. As this integration deepens, a subtle shift occurs. You begin to sense that detachment is not something you do, but something you remember, a natural state that was obscured by fear and reinforced by habit. The more you live from it, the more you recognize its quiet authority. It does not need to convince. It simply works. What remains, then, is to gather these insights into a final reflection, to see how this misunderstood power, once recognized and embodied, can become a call not away from life, but into a deeper, more honest participation in it. When all the layers are peeled back, when the metaphors quiet and the concepts loosen their grip, detachment reveals itself not as a technique to be mastered, but as a truth to be remembered. It is not an achievement waiting at the end of discipline or insight. It is a ground that was always beneath your feet, obscured only by the habit of clinging. The great misunderstanding of detachment lies in believing it must be added to life, when in reality it emerges naturally as the unnecessary weight is set down. Throughout this exploration, detachment has appeared again and again not as distance, but as intimacy without possession. It is a way of being fully present without demanding permanence, of loving without turning love into a contract against loss. Detachment does not cancel desire. It clarifies it. It does not dull experience. It sharpens perception. It does not make you passive. It makes your actions cleaner, less distorted by fear and self-protection. What removes is not life's intensity, but the inner violence of insisting that life conform to your grip. There's a quiet dignity that arises when detachment is lived rather than theorized. You can feel it in how someone listens without rushing to defend themselves, in how they allow silence without filling it, in how they face endings without theatrics or denial. This dignity is not aloofness. It is steadiness. It is the confidence of someone who knows that whatever arrives, they do not have to abandon themselves to meet it. Detachment becomes the art of staying home in your own awareness, while the world continues its dance of arrival and departure. At a deeper level, detachment is a form of trust, but not the naive trust that everything will go according to plan. It is a mature trust in your capacity to meet what does not. It is a recognition that you do not need guarantees in order to be alive, engaged, or meaningful. This trust does not erase grief, fear, or longing. It places them in a larger context, where they are allowed to exist without being mistaken for the whole story. You become someone who can carry experience rather than be carried away by it. The transformational call of detachment is subtle, which is why it is so often overlooked. It does not demand renunciation of the world, but renunciation of the belief that the world must complete you in order for you to be whole. It invites you to participate fully while holding outcomes lightly, to care deeply without making care a weapon against yourself. It asks you to notice where attachment has quietly become a form of self-surveillance, and to release that tension not through force, but through understanding. This call is not answered all at once. Detachment grows the way dawn arrives, gradually, almost imperceptibly, until one day you realize you are seeing differently. You notice that you recover more quickly from disappointment, that you can disagree without needing to dominate, that you can love without bargaining, that you can stand in uncertainty without immediately reaching for distraction or certainty as anesthesia. These shifts are not dramatic, but they're profound. They signal a return to a more spacious way of being human. Ultimately, detachment reveals that the power you have been seeking in control, validation, and permanence was always available in presence. in the ability to stay with what is without demanding that it justify itself, in the courage to let life move, trusting that you are not separate from its movement. Detachment is not a withdrawal from meaning. It is a clearing that allows meaning to arise without being strangled by expectation. If there's a final invitation here, it is not to let go of everything, but to experiment gently with letting go of the idea that you must hold everything together. To see what happens when you loosen the inner fist just enough to feel the pulse of life again. To discover, perhaps with some surprise, that what remains when attachment softens is not emptiness, but a quiet, resilient fullness, one that does not depend on circumstances to justify its existence. Detachment, then, is not the end of the path. It is the way the path is walked when fear no longer leads. It is the freedom of moving through a changing world without demanding that it stop changing for your sake. And in that freedom, paradoxically, life is met not with less devotion, but with a deeper, steadier, more luminous form of love.